When you look at objects and surfaces in the real world, they're rarely perfectly smooth. They have irregularities, and these catch the light and give the surface its character. We can add bumps to our materials in a few ways. So we've got this orange material. Open up the material in the material editor here, and we'll make sure the bump channel is enabled. The bump channel needs a grayscale image, so it works with changing luminance values. So we are going to use a noise, and I'm going to go into, and you can see actually the preview update here. Got this bumpy surface. So we're going to go into here and just change the type, and I'm going to change it to FBM, and we'll just come out of here and have a look. Now let's press Alt-R and we'll get our render preview up, and we're quite far away, but you should be able to see that we have some apparent displacement on the surface, and this is because the bump channel's reacting to the lights that we have in the scene here. Just get in a bit closer. Doesn't look too bad. Looks kind of like an orange. Now, if we get even closer, okay, it's starting to break up a bit. And if we get even closer, it's really not holding up well at all. And you'll notice that the surface is just not deformed at all. So we can use bumps for when we're a bit further away. They're certainly useful for that, just to add that look of the surface being displaced. But when you're up close, they're not going to hold up that well. You can also come in here and just maybe make the effect quite subtle, just change the strength. Another way of improving the look of the bumps in Release 18 is using parallax offset. So if we increase that, so if we just come back in, just have a little look, I'm going to filter off this grid. It's not really going to have an effect on something like this, but it can give your objects a better sense of depth. And if you check out the Cinema 4D R18 new features course, we go over parallax in there. So let's come out and frame up our orange again. Let's just have a look at a different noise type. So we're going to copy this texture, and we'll disable the bump channel, enable the normal channel, and the normal channel works with RGB values. So we need to come in here and give it, we need an effect, the normalizer. Inside the normalizer, we will add our texture. So we're going to right click and paste, but nothing happens because the noise is 3D shader by default. So we need to change the space to 2D. And now we should see a little result, but let's increase the strength of that. And now we can see the surface apparently being displaced. Again, tricks, it's all trickery. So if we can increase the contrast using different filters, that's a bit strong, come down a bit there. And I'm just going to back out of this, close it down, and let's just look at what the normal channel is doing. So it's displacing the surface maybe in a more pleasing way than the bump channel. Not sure, it's down to taste really, and it's on a per object basis. But this was kind of used in computer games to give low poly objects detail. We have it available to us in Cinema 4D. And you can see though that we've got the same issues. It doesn't hold up too well to scrutiny, and we don't have any displacement on the surface. So how do we get displacement on the surface? Well, we can use the displacement channel. In your editor, if we have the displacement enabled, in the editor, there's a new mode for the viewport, so we don't even need this interactive render region anymore. We can turn that off. If we turn on our view options for tessellations, and you need to make sure the mode is not set to none, it needs to be set to uniform or projective. And then if we add a texture, and we'll just paste in what we've been using before to the texture field, paste that in, you'll start to see some tessellations happen, but you won't, because you need to make sure that your sphere is not set to render perfect. Now this is, if I turn that off, now we'll see the displacement happening in the viewport. I'm just going to turn on the render region again, Alt-R, and you can see by default we've got just this little amount of displacement happening. That's due to the segments here. So if I just close this down so we're not moving it all around the place, if we increase this, like so, we will get more displacement on the geometry. If we go even bigger, you can see the effect increases because it has more polygons to displace. So if you don't want to have a scene, and if we press NB, this has got really crazy, and it slows down the viewport a bit as well. Imagine if you had loads of these spheres, you wouldn't want to increase the number of segments to this high all the time. So let's bring that down to where we had it around 48. And if you turn the shading to this mode, it just looks a bit nicer. So now let's look at how we can keep our segments low, but achieve the same effect at render time. So we can do that with sub-poly displacement. Alt-R will get up our interactive render region, and you can see now the difference. It's slower to render. Of course it is, because now what it's doing is it's taking every polygon on that surface, subdividing it by this number. So it's subdividing each one 4 times. If I uncheck that, you can see super quick, but now check it on, we've got the detail. So to get back to where we were, maybe we want to make this look a bit more like an orange. We can change the noise type, maybe a bit better, reduce the scale, bring the contrast down a touch maybe. And what we need to do probably for this kind of scale is be mindful of the height that we're using. So we can just bring that down. And we do get this displaced bumpy surface. So what we can do to prove it is just come in here and just have a look at the edge. And it is actually deforming. If I just undo the views a couple of times, come back out and just come round. There we have a few ways of making our surfaces bumpy. So if you are far away and you don't need the detail, bump and normal are definitely your friends. Use those. If you need that detail and you're going to get right in there with the camera, then use displacements and take the render hit.